Hi, it's Colleen and welcome back to my channel. For today's project, we're taking a look at a theater costume that I need to make. I am in a community choir and three of us are getting to perform a parody of the Supremes' Stop in the Name of Love. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're really looking forward to it. And because we love to perform and we love to glam it up, we're making some quick and easy costumes that will look like the glam of the Supremes, but act like a quick change theater costume. So let me take a minute to explain my design challenges. The first one is that the Supremes, in the height of their popularity, were young and thin and had impeccably tailored costumes. When you look at pictures of them, they are wearing costumes that fit like a glove. We just can't do that. So we are three beautiful ladies, but we're quite a bit older than the Supremes were at the time, and we have different shapes and sizes of bodies than the Supremes did. So we can't wear the same type of body-conscious clothing that they did. We also have limitations in terms of time. We need something that we can change on stage, so we can't go to a dressing room and put on a costume. It has to be something that will pull over our heads and have minimal fastenings. The third challenge is that I need to make 3 of these, and I need to have them done in the next week so that we can show these costumes to our director to get approval. I needed something that was quick and easy to make. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that we were paying attention to budget. These costumes are only on stage for a short amount of time. I think total we'll probably be wearing them for about 4 or 5 minutes. So we didn't want to put a lot of money into a costume that would only be seen for such a short time. So that's a lot to take into consideration, but when we talked about all of these different challenges and we looked at the styles that the Supremes wore, and particularly that Diana Ross wore as she moved into the 70s as a solo artist, we landed on sequined kaftans. And I'm going to show you how quick and easy a kaftan is to make if you want to make one for yourself. At its most basic, a kaftan is a very long rectangle of fabric, and you finish off the side seams and the hems, and then you fold it in half so this becomes your shoulder line. Then you sew up from the side a seam that goes up to where your underarm is. This would be your stitching line from the hem up to the width that you want your sleeve to be. And then finally, you end up cutting in a neckline up here. When you slip that over your head and you have it stitched from here to here, this will go around your body, this will hang loose, and this is where your arms go, right here. So you don't sew from here to here, you just leave it open. We're making it out of slinky knit sequined fabric. So it's going to drape really nicely, whereas this is kind of stiff. The other thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna put a line of elastic right here under the bust. And that way it will kind of gather up just a little bit and give us a bit more of a flattering shape right under the bust line. My measurement is from my shoulder to the length that I want it to be, and you multiply that by 2. My length is 48 inches. So my long piece of fabric is 96 inches, and it's the full width of fabric, which in our case is about 54 inches wide. So I know that that's going to be enough to go over my shoulders and account for a little bit of a hem at the bottom. Then we measured in from the edge of the fabric to where we want it to be seamed on our body, and we don't want it too tight. So in my case, it's 16 inches in, but in another person's case, it might be less or it might be more. To get the fit I want on my body, I'm going to measure in 16 inches from the finished edge of this fabric and sew my line of stitching. We're also giving ourselves 15 inches from the shoulder line down to the start of the stitching, so our sleeves will be 15 inches wide. This part is the elastic, and that's measured from the shoulder seam over the bust to the under bust. That will vary from person to person. So that's a pretty simple project. If you think about it, it's really just 2 seams and a little bit of gathering, and you cut the hole. If it was fabric that doesn't fray, that would be all I would have to do. But because it's a sequin fabric, I'm going to need to finish the edges, and let me show you how I'm going to do that. This is our fabric, and it's absolutely beautiful. It is see-through, so we're wearing it over black pants and a black tank top because, again, we're changing on stage. That will be already on, and we'll just pull it over. So I don't have to worry about lining this. And you can see I cut off some samples in order to test my finishing technique. If you don't do anything, these sequins pop right off. So you can see I've got 3 of them just sitting here. They will continue to fray because these sequins are sewn on. If you don't finish the edge, there's nothing to keep them from coming off. It would be nice if I didn't have to do anything with this edge, but I do. The other issue is that this is the side of the fabric, the piece that comes down here on our little sample. We can't leave it like this. We need to cut all this white off and turn it so that it's a nice finished edge. And what worked best is to sew lace tape to the right side of the fabric and then flip it around and top stitch. Because this is stretchy fabric, if you don't sew something on there to stabilize it, then when you go to finish it, you'll see it'll kind of bubble up and wobble. But this gave me a really beautiful finish right here. That's how I'm going to finish all of the edges. And it will take a little more time, but it gives us a really nice look. So that is my plan. But how beautiful is this fabric? We're running at about 3 yards per person. It's about $20 for the costume. Now that I've cut my sequin fabric to length, I need to bind the edges. The way to do that is to use this seam binding, this lace seam binding. It comes in a package that, well, this is vintage, but this is essentially what you're looking for. If I've got the edge of my fabric here and I have my lace, I'm going to stitch it on so that the fabric on back comes about halfway through the lace. We're going to stitch that on with a wide zigzag loose tension, and then we will turn that to the inside just like this and stitch it down. Okay, so my binding is sewn on, and now what I will do next is flip it over and stitch it again. And we're stitching about 1/4 inch away from the edge. There we go. And that encases that raw edge, and so those sequins are not going to go anywhere. My friends and I have been trying to decide about how big the neckline should be. So one of my friends brought a shirt that had a neckline that worked pretty well for all of us. And I just took a copy off of the back curve. So this is from the center back up to the shoulder seam. I copied that onto some paper, and I'm going to fold my kaftan into 4ths. So it's in half lengthwise and then it's in half widthwise. So I'm going to trim. This is kind of scary because we don't know if it's going to work or not. But I'm going to trim right along this edge here to create the back neck opening. And then I'll work on creating the V down the front. I'm going to pull out my little sample here again. When I cut the back, I had it folded in half like this and then folded in half again. And I just trimmed that back neck curve right here. Now I've unfolded it like this, and it is folded in half this way. And you can see I have clipped that opening I made before. If this is the back, then this is the front that's going to be down like a V-neck, just like this. So I just have to decide how far down to cut it. I can always cut it deeper, but I can't add fabric back. So I want to make sure I get it right the first time. I just need to be able to replicate whatever I do on this one onto the other ones. So I'm going to go a little shallower because I'd rather be safe than sorry. And I'm going to follow this angle and hope that I haven't just ruined this. That's what I ended up with. It's perfect. It's not too low, but it's wide enough to easily go over the head, and it's going to be just perfect. So now I'm going to do the same thing to finish this off. I'm going to stitch that lace around the edge and then turn it so that this is finished, and I'll have to clip into these corners, of course, to make it turn nicely. You can see how that back neck edge has warped a little bit. You can press it using a pressing cloth. This material would melt if I put my iron directly on it, but a pressing cloth works wonderfully. I am going to baste it from the point at which I want that seam to stop all the way down to the hem, and then I'll try it on and make sure it's okay. We have added a little bit of a gathering area right here just to help it flatter the body a bit more. So the way I did that on my friends who are not here for me to finish their costumes is I just measured from this top of their shoulder down around to just under the bust. You can see that measurement right there, and then I can measure it flat on the kaftan and sew in the elastic. That makes a really nice gathering detail right there and just makes it a little more flattering because kaftans, you know, they're loose. They don't really look good on a lot of people. You can see I've turned this inside out. I have a piece of lace seam binding that is about 9.5 inches long. This is just a size that seems to work proportionally. On these costumes, you can make whatever size you need, but this is going to form a casing for the elastic. First, I need to measure according to my client's measurements, and she needs about 17 inches from the top of the shoulder here to where the bottom of her bust is. Just right at that underbust. So I'm going to go ahead and make a mark using this blue fabric marking pencil, and I'll do the same thing on the other side, so about 17 inches down. And now I'll take my big ruler and I'll line up on those two marks, and I'll make a mark right in the center so I know where the middle is and a little bit off to either side. So now when I go to stitch that in, I can put a pin in the middle of my tape and line that center up with the center here, and that'll tell me where to stitch. The other thing I need to do is cut my elastic. So here is my elastic casing, and here's some elastic. In order to get the fullness of gathers that we want, but still have it be adjustable, we are going to measure this elastic based on its full stretched out position. And that is where I will cut the elastic. So for a 9.5 inch casing, I have approximately 4 3/4 inch of elastic, so about half. Start by sewing down the short end of both the elastic and the lace tape. Now pull the elastic out of the way and stitch down one edge of the lace tape. When you get to the end, stitch the elastic and the tape together again, and then stitch down the other side of the casing, making sure that you don't catch the elastic. Here's the completed kaftan. It has been a couple weeks since we had our Christmas show, and it worked out exactly as planned. It was easy to get in and out of, and it served its purpose well. So I'd like to show you what this looks like when it's worn. There we go. It's really simple, really easy to put on, and it looks fine for what it is. I personally don't need to wear this too often, but it's fun for a Supremes impersonation. You can see this little bit of elastic right here. Did a good job of providing some definition in what is actually a very loose fitting garment. But we have plenty of motion, and the sequins were perfect on stage. This fabric is pretty sheer, but we knew we needed to put it on over other clothes, so it didn't matter. But we had about 60 seconds to change completely on stage, and that gave us enough time to put this on over our black tank top and black pants and add some fun accessories. Some satin gloves, a sparkly headband. I'm not going to put the wig on, but I did have a 1960s bob wig, and we added a fun boa. So this let us come out very quickly and transform into the Supremes in order to do our fun parody song, and it worked out great. I couldn't have asked for a better solution for what we needed. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you like what you see here, go ahead and subscribe. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss a thing, and follow me on Instagram if you'd like to stay up to date with what's happening on this channel. Thanks, and have a great day.